Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from this channel, and in this video I discuss some of the principles of high energy fighting in fighters and some of the differences between low to mid tier play and high tier play in World of Warplanes. If you've read the About section of this channel, you'll know that I'm aiming my videos at newer players in the hope that I'll help them understand how to do a little bit better in World of Warplanes. Well, if that's the case, why am I showing you tier 10 gameplay here? Well, there are a number of reasons. First, originally I hadn't intended to publish this video. I wanted to keep it unlisted so I could review it and try to improve my own FW252 gameplay. It's a plane I struggle in, frankly. Secondly, it occurred to me that it may be useful for viewers to know that I do play at tier 10, and therefore I should know, at least in some measure, what I'm talking about. Also, the ideas I discuss in the video aren't limited to high tiers, they apply at lower mid tiers as well. And finally, it will give newer players some idea of what's coming at high tiers, what's different about the game. As you might have guessed from the video title, this video is about high altitude, high energy fighting, and the FW252 is a high altitude, high energy fighter. And its main competition at tier 10 is the MiG-15 bis and the Swift. Now, the MiG-15 bis is a good aircraft in my opinion. The Swift is a difficult aircraft, but both of them, again in my opinion, are superior to the FW252. The 252 doesn't have a niche where it is obviously superior to either of these aircraft. And more than that, if you fly it badly, it's in danger of being outclassed by the MEP-1101 and the F-86A as well. So that's why I say it's a difficult aircraft, and it's no surprise that I struggle in it. So let's start with a strategic analysis, as I normally do. This is the Road to Rome map, and it's the Call of Duty variant. That means it has 4 garrisons scattered around a central air base, which of course is a repair base. And just to remind everyone, garrisons confer 3 resources every 5 seconds. An air base confers those resources as well. It can be selected as a spawn point. You can select a different aircraft of the same tier if your aircraft is destroyed, or you can have your aircraft fully repaired by the special object if that hasn't been damaged by enemy activity. Now, at low to mid tiers, not only is the airbase strategically important, it's also tactically important because of its central position. At low to mid tiers, your aircraft are probably going to be limited to attacking local garrisons and the airbase in the first place, unless you happen to be in a heavy or a bomber. However, at tier 10, jet-powered aircraft change this scenario. They are quite capable of doing what I would call a garrison tour on this map. That is, they can attack the local garrisons and take them, ignore the central airbase and fly quickly to the far-flung garrisons and also take those. And the key point there is that turn fighting, which at low to mid tiers would be critical for protecting the airbase, is much less important because enemy teams can simply ignore the airbase and still have a good chance of taking 3 to 4 sectors on this map. So if you're a newer player to the game, it's likely that turn fighting is one of your main strengths, and what you need to know is that as you go up the tiers, turn fighting becomes less and less important. And I would say that at high tiers, certainly at tier 10, it is very far from being the dominant playstyle. So without further ado, I'm going to head north to the nearest garrison and set about the enemy air defense aircraft, the heavies specifically, and there's the first one. And the FW252 has 30mm cannons, very good for taking out limited maneuverability aircraft. The FW252 itself is not that manoeuvrable an aircraft, so it's best taking out the top first, that's the heavies of course, and only then engaging the fighters. Now 30mm are destructive, but they're quite hard to land, and as you see, it takes me a little while to get my eye in. My bot team has already taken its 2 local garrisons, and things look encouraging at this point. So I begin to look towards the airfield. I gain altitude to make sure I'm above everything, as I should in this aircraft. Looking for a target of opportunity. And I decide that I'm going to take this enemy heavy, even though he's flying out of the sector. And there's a reason for that. The enemy heavies will tend to set about FW252s, their favourite prey. I don't want this aircraft bothering me when I'm attacking a sector, so I'm going to kill it. And I have. But it's taken me all the way back to the garrison. And that's something about Tier 10 games you should be aware of. You can find yourself leaving one sector and entering another very quickly compared to low or mid tiers. At this moment, both teams have their local garrisons. I decide to make sure the enemy bombers can't threaten ours. Now the 30s will do a lot of damage to bombers, but I can tell you at Tier 10, if that was a human player in that bomber, I would not have been doing that. Human players tend to have very nasty rear guns, and they wreck fighters, and you only take them on, certainly from behind in a fighter, if you absolutely have to. However, these are bots, so I feel relatively safe, and my 30s make short work of both bombers. However, that's at the cost of losing the airfield, and now we're 3 sectors to 2 down. Although I stated that the airfield isn't as important tactically at high tiers when it's centrally positioned like this, one thing it does give teams an advantage in is where the bombers spawn, and as you can see they're already on their way to our garrisons. Now previously I made the decision to shoot them down. I don't feel I've got the time to do that. I'm going to keep altitude. I'm not going to assault the airbase because there's a lot of red aircraft in there and I can only see one of my own, and I'm going to start my garrison tour. Here I go, enemy garrison, and I'm looking for the enemy heavies to shoot down. And there's the first one. A nice volley of shots on that. Next pass should see him go down. And immediately I turn to look for the other heavy because, as heavies do, he's probably looking for me. Well, certainly air defence heavies. And he was in my vicinity. There he was. He didn't get a shot on me, so I'm now going to work him over. Careful gun management here, like all cannons. They have overheat and cooling cycles. You can't just keep your finger on the trigger. You have to manage your bursts. And with that I take the garrison as I knock down the enemy fighter. I only went down for him after I disposed of the heavies, as you saw, but unfortunately at that time the enemy took one of our local garrisons. Fortunately it looks as if the airfield may fall to us. Again, I see an enemy heavy in my vicinity. I can't ignore him because I'm pretty sure he will set about me if I do. So fairly long range shots here, only a little damage. Sure enough the airfield falls. I'm quite lucky there, I didn't have to do it, and as you saw I disengaged from the heavy and he turned. Fortunately for me, he's turned and flown into the airbase, so I can kill him in there and keep it secure. In fact, actually it's not locked down. So I begin to consider doing something called yo-yo fighting here, and I get this one wrong. There are 2 enemy aircraft below. I go for the multi-roll, I ignore the pirate, and the pirate shoots out my engine. Now the FW252 is useless without an engine, so all I can do now, because I certainly can't outmaneuver the pirate, I'll explain that in a moment, is try to get out of the sector, which I've done successfully. The FW252 is rated at over 50 manoeuvrability. However, most of that figure is generated from a very good roll rate. As far as turning is concerned, you can forget it. It is not a turn fighter. And I'm not actually sure how I managed to survive this long, frankly. I work over a Spitfire, but I'm waiting for what I think is inevitable, and a bomb drops and destroys my aircraft. So I respawn at the original spawn point rather than the airfield because I want to try and get this garrison under control. We're 3 sectors to 2 down. The game is in a precarious state. My garrison tour is not going as well as I would have liked, but we can still win this game. So I find the Spitfire badly damaged previously and shoot him down. Go looking for another aircraft, and something else flips this sector. And at the same time, almost as if by magic, we take one of the enemy local garrisons. So the advantage is now swung back to my team. I go looking for the heavy again. Gaining altitude. Start to destroy the... in fact, I do destroy the enemy heavy. That's a useful kill because that helps secure the airbase. And now I go into yo-yo fighting mode again, or high energy fighting as I should call it really. And this is where I trade altitude for speed, pounce on unsuspecting targets, destroy them, boost away, gain altitude again, rinse and repeat. And this technique is not limited to tier 10 aircraft. If you play on the North American server, or you like your Mustangs, you'll be familiar with this playstyle, vertical dogfighting. But it goes down much further than that. The BF-109B is also excellent if you employ this method. I do. It's just 3 or 4 times slower. What you don't want to be caught doing in those aircraft is turn fighting. You go up and down using your boost to get away, and then dive on unsuspecting prey again. And that technique allowed me to destroy a number of aircraft and secure the airfield. And you may have noticed that at no point have I seen the Yak-30 in this battle. The Yak-30 has been forced out of its comfort zone. It's an excellent turn fighter, but it hasn't been able to sit at the airfield and destroy everything that comes to it. And that's because my team has been persistently taking the local garrisons, and indeed I've done it once myself, and I'm about to go and do it again. And the Yak-30 has been forced as a relatively slow aircraft at tier 10 to do something it's not that good at, fly from sector to sector, trying to recapture them. So, if you're a newer player of the game and you love your turn fighting, okay, it's still available at these tiers, but you need to understand you're not going to be as successful, at least in terms of a win rate, as you might be at lower tiers. Turn fighting is not dominant at these tiers. So I work over the pirate, I disengage, I'm not going to turn fight with him, and I go and find an unsuspecting J7W3, which I absolutely obliterate with my 30mm cannons. Having gained altitude, I swing round again. I find the pirate wallowing below me. It's a little unfair, he is speeding along, but he's below me. And that flips this sector, and it secures the game. And it's a nice victory. It's a 5 chevron battle, a winged legend to go alongside the hero of the sky, and for me, a decent total of 14,625 points, even against moderate opposition. I'm pleased with that. So let's review the battle result, and if we look in the middle we can see it was a 5 chevron battle, confirmation that that's the best result for a fighter at grade 1. Gross 157,651 credits, that's with a premium account bonus, and bonuses will apply to the next 2 items of course. If we pop across to the message box, which I've set up previously, you can see that the repair costs, which will come off that 157,000, were 11,400. I used prepaid consumables, so there were no expenses there. Combat experience of 16,215 with the bonuses. That includes a ×3 first win of the day in the FW252. 810 free experience with the bonus, and a couple of tokens, one for the Hero of the Sky badge and one for a Winged Legend. Coming to the personal score tab, we can see that 2 of the class specific missions weren't entirely complete, but still enough was done to obtain the 5 chevrons. There were 14,625 personal points, 3 sectors captured, 15 aerial targets destroyed, 8,403 damage to aerial targets, perhaps a slightly surprisingly low 17 critical hits with these cannons. I was destroyed once by the FJ-1, and capture points 520, and hovering over it we can see that 240 of those were defending sectors and 280 for attacking sectors. We go to the team score tab, we can see that was enough for first place. The rest of my team were bots of course, and there was a decent contribution from the player in the Yak-30 which wasn't specialised. Tata Oscar, well done. So that was a discussion of some of the principles of high energy fighting illustrated with Tier 10 gameplay, but as I explained in the video, those principles apply from low tiers to mid tiers. If you're a newer player concentrating on your turn fighting skills, you need to be aware that as you progress up the tiers in the game, that playstyle becomes less dominant and less important, and you will have to start expanding your repertoire to include this type of fighting, for instance. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, I hope you watch more of my content that I release in the future. But until then, this is Royal Flying Corps signing out.